Welcome to Mainland, your local regional television station. I'm Graham O'Brien and some of the stories coming up in today's news. Earthquake felt across country, water restrictions to kick in, aircraft electrical problems sorted and more. The demolition and the refurbishment of the Trafalgar Centre area has cost Nelson community groups their premises to make way for a new playground development and driveway to the Trafalgar Centre. I caught up with Councillor Pete Rainey, the Chair of Community Services, to find out the reasons behind the shift of some who have been resident in the area for over 30 years and why these groups hadn't been figured into Council's long-term plan.
Councillor Rainey, thanks for taking time to talk to us. You're the Chair of Community Services and you're in charge of what's been going on with the community groups down at the Trafalgar Park. Can you just give us your side of what's going on down there?
Oh, sure. I mean, over a period of years, we have put in place a plan for Rutherford Park, outlined what Council's vision was for that area, and also an implementation plan as to how that plan was going to roll out over a period of time. Overlaid over the top of that has been some more urgent decision making regarding the Trafalgar Centre and the way that we were going to get people in towards the Trafalgar Centre. And that, in conjunction with the implementation of the Rutherford Park management plan, has meant that we have been in a position where we've needed to move some community groups from the Rutherford Park area.
Sure. And when you say move, I mean, I've interviewed them and we've had their interviews on TV. I mean, they all seem pretty much out in the cold. I mean, especially the pipe band, they've got no place to practice at the moment. What's going to happen to these community groups? It seems quite harsh that they've just been left to fend for themselves, really, and that there's a long way to go for them. They're starting from scratch. They're having to build their own premises again. What do you think?
I need to take you to task on some of those comments. They certainly haven't been left out in the cold. There's been conversations going on with these groups for some time. Highland Pipe Band are rehearsing at the darts rooms over in Guppy Park, and it looks like that they'll be getting a permanent space there, which is great. The small bore rifle small bore guys are shifting to a new facility, hopefully, out at Saxton Field. We've got a temporary facility sorted out for them in the Reliance building around the port. They've got a range that's been set up there on a temporary basis until such time as the future of their building at Saxton Field is ascertained. The Community Artworks group are in a temporary building in the middle of town. And it's certainly my intention to put in place or to facilitate putting in place a permanent home for them adjacent to the refinery art space.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, thanks for taking me to task. I'll just come back with you on that one. The Highland Pipe Band at the Darts Club, you know, it's not fit for purpose, that building where the other one was. They're practicing outside. As far as I know, the Small Bore Rifle Club, they're trying to make it fit for purpose, but it seems pretty much up in the air. And then also they're going to Saxton Field. It seems quite an arrangement there. They have to fundraise at least half of the total costs, and which seems a big ask after they already had their own buildings that were good for national events, and the Rifle Club was international events.
So as far as the Highland Pipe Band is concerned, I agree with you. I think, I mean, the Highland Pipe Band is a unique group of people who need to have an indoor rehearsal space that is obviously acoustically able to cope with having a Highland Pipe Band in it. They do rehearse outside because they rehearse outside for marching, and arguably they were doing that at Rutherford Park as well. So whether the darts room ends up being a permanent solution for them or not remains to be seen. These things don't happen overnight, and we certainly are fully supportive of getting a long-term solution to their needs, because we value the contribution that the Highland Pipe Band makes to the city. As far as the small bore rifle guys are concerned, the situation, the temporary situation they've got at the moment is certainly only temporary, and we are absolutely committed to helping them put in place a brand new facility at Saxton Field. Now, whether that means that council will put financial support into that is not something that I can answer on camera. That would be something that would need to come up through normal council processes. Could well happen, Graham, but that request hasn't been made by them at this stage.
Sure. It just seems a bit harsh that so much has gone into the planning of the Trafalgar Centre, yet these community groups have been not put into the plan so well, and are now playing catch up yet again. Like they've been there 30 years and 50 years. I mean, Highland Pipe Band's been around for 90 years. Do you feel that you've had enough consultation, and have you met with them regularly and talked with them?
Well, I've met with them from time to time, and certainly staff members have met with them a lot. I mean, there has been good conversations going on. It would be fair to say that all of the groups were very aware of their scenario. They knew what the situation was, and that one day, their position on Rutherford Park was going to come into question. Now, the Rutherford Park plan has been clearly articulated over a period of time. It's been 5 or 6 years that plan's been in place. They've had it just as long as we've put it out, so they've known that the situation was coming. We've talked to them about it, and we are working constructively with those groups to try and put some things in place that are going to be satisfactory for them, if not an improvement.
Sure. And just coming back to your meetings, it seems a lot of the time that the consultation is not really going how people want it to go or how people expect it to go. Have you had minuted meetings where you've sat down and really knuckled out sort of some of these issues?
Well, it's not a position where we need to have a minuted meeting in terms of a meeting between staff and them in looking at the way ahead. We certainly have had plenty of meetings, and I think we're in a good space at the moment, and I would be surprised if any of the groups were uncomfortable with where they are at.
We're struggling a little bit with sound issues and things. Playing inside the hall is quite tricky, so at the moment our practices are all outside, so on a nice day it's all right.
It's cost us quite a bit to move, and so we're asking for volunteers because we'd like to be able to pay you guys, but we don't have the money.
Well, we had to move from Parapara Road courts, which were very nice. There was 12 courts there, and they were laid by us, and we were very happy renting the pipe band room for our morning and afternoon teas, and everything was fine until we got the news that we had to move on the 1st of April, which was last year, and there was a sudden move of cabinets and all our gear over to Trafalgar Park.
Not all of them have the same level of expectation about what's happening, and some of them have a little bit more of a grey area in terms of where they're heading. Maybe the Highland Pipe Band guys are a little bit hesitant about where they are. But at this stage, I think Council's working with them well, and I can see some good scenarios coming out.
And what would be some of the scenarios that you'd see in the future that you'd like to see, like for the community artworks, especially?
Well, I think that this is my personal view. It's not Council's view, but I see a really strong synergy between community artworks and the kind of activity that's happening at the refinery. There's a bit of clear space behind the refinery, which would be a really good idea to not use it as a car park, but to use it as more productive space. So I would like to see that happen. I think the small bore rifle facility that will end up getting constructed out at Saxon Field will be an outstanding facility, and will give them the opportunity of doing national tournaments, and I think they're going to be really wrapped with it. It's always sad when an old facility goes, and I have full empathy for the especially for the older club members who've been down there for a long period of time and poured a lot of energy into that. But things change. Highland Pipe Band, I absolutely value what they're doing. They're a unique group, and they need to be sorted out in a way that's going to be good for them and good for the city as well. Overall, I'm extremely excited about the future of Rutherford Park, and I think that for me, what I've been trying to drive through as Chair of Community Services for some years now is to turn that area of town round and to get more people using what is really quite a unique part of Nelson and was underutilised.
A 5.7 earthquake, which was felt in Nelson on Tuesday, hit the region with a sudden jolt, followed by a small rolling motion that seemed to last around a minute. The earthquake struck at 1:39 p.m. and GeoNet reported that it was at a depth of about 48 kilometres, approximately 35 kilometres southeast of St Arnaud in the Marlborough region. The earthquake was felt widely throughout central New Zealand and in both the North and South Island. GeoNet had received about 3,000 felt reports soon after from these areas. Chrissy Small spoke to Anna Kaiser from GeoNet to try and find out which fault the quake came from and any explanations as to what may have caused it.
Anna, I believe the earthquake was quite widely felt.
Yeah, that's right. So we have felt reports from as far north as Auckland and as far south as Otago. with it being felt quite widely between Taranaki and Canterbury. So certainly it was felt over much of the country.
So how many reports have come in to GeoNet about this?
So currently we have just under 4,000 felt reports.
Goodness, so quite a few people obviously enjoy GeoNet enough to notify you when they've felt an earthquake.
Yeah, that's right. I think certainly the greater awareness that's around earthquakes since the Canterbury quakes, for instance, and we also had some in the central North Island in the last, in recent years. I think people have become, quite enthusiastic about using the GeoNet app to share their experience during the earthquakes.
Right, and look, yesterday's earthquake, it was a 5.7. Now that's quite a large earthquake, isn't it?
Yeah, that is quite large. Fortunately, it was in a reasonably remote area, so it was about 35 kilometres south of the nearest town, being St Arnaud. So fortunately, it was in a remote area, and it was also a little bit deeper than some of the ones that we've had in that area, which also helps minimise the effects.
Right, okay. Now, can you tell me what fault line that was actually sited on?
Right, so the earthquake was about 50 kilometres deep, and around about at this depth we've got the interface, or the boundary between the Pacific plate, which is diving underneath the Australian plate. So it's a big plate boundary interface just down there. And this earthquake, although we can't tell exactly where it is, it's certainly associated with this system. We've had a look at the earthquake mechanism, which tells us about the type of faulting, and it doesn't look like from that at this stage that it was actually on that interface, but very close to it. And it's a very complex tectonic area, this one, because there's a lot of different things going on. You've got this big plate subduction along this huge plate boundary interface, and then above that, the plate movement's been accommodated in a more complex ways all the way through the crust, until in the upper crust you've got these big fault lines that you can see on aerial photographs, and you can see at the surface, for instance. But of course, this earthquake's happening below those faults you see at the surface, somewhere deeper within the earth.
Right. Okay, so is it a good sign that we have this movement going on?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a good or a bad sign. It's just a reality of living in a seismically active part of New Zealand, that you do get these sorts of earthquakes from time to time. It's sort of a reminder, if you like, of the environment we do live in, that you can at any time have a large earthquake, and it's best to be prepared.
Right, so everyone should have their water bottles, their food, their containers full of survival equipment on the ready.
Yeah, I think that goes for now and at any time, and we can't predict exactly when earthquakes are going to occur. We can just have a look at what's happened and monitor the situation, looking at the aftershocks of events like this, for instance, and looking at what's happening that way.
Right. Now, Anna, people seem to put a timeline on, that we need a big one between this amount of time and that amount of time. Where are we in the timeline of big earthquakes for this region?
For this region, it's difficult to tell in this region, because there are a lot of different sources, or a lot of different faults that could produce earthquake shaking or strong earthquake shaking in this area. And so each of those faults, we try to look at these faults in different ways, try to look at past earthquakes that occurred on these faults, and what sort of interval you get, or what timeline you get for each individual fault. And it varies from fault to fault. Some go more often, some go less often. Some produce bigger earthquakes and produce smaller earthquakes. And so there's a lot of different information out there. And I think for this area, all we can say is that a big earthquake could happen at any time, and has done in the history. If you look at the historical record.
Well, one of the big surprises, of course, in recent history is Christchurch. No one would have, in 100 years, thought that Christchurch would have sustained such a terrible disaster and earthquake. Is that likely to happen elsewhere in this country?
Right, so yeah, the Christchurch earthquakes were more unusual events, so they happened less often, or thought to happen less often, in a sense because the plate, or the movement between plates is accommodated, or this region is accommodating less of the movement between plates as some of the other areas in New Zealand. And certainly there will be there is the possibility of a large earthquake anywhere in the country, but in some areas we consider this to be much more likely than others, just depending on the rates of movement of these plates and the sort of intervals of earthquakes we see on these major active faults.
Right. And so how do people know about the risks in their region? Is that on the GeoNet site?
There's a lot of background information on the GeoNet web pages about different regions and past historical earthquakes, for instance. And there's also, I guess, this sort of information is described in a more quantitative fashion, so with probabilities and so on within the National Seismic Hazard Model, which is something that is used to underpin structural design, so building design codes and so on. They use sort of more numerical, quantitative measures of seismic hazard. But certainly the GeoNet web pages and the GNS web pages are good places to start for some background information.
Right.
With only 5 days left to go, pledges from all over New Zealand are now threatening to withdraw their contributions to the Give Little campaign to buy Araroa Beach on the Abel Tasman coast after news that businessman Gareth Morgan said he would pay the shortfall needed to buy an Abel Tasman beach property for public use, conditional that his family have exclusive use of some of the land and buildings for a non-specific time before putting it into public ownership. More than 22,000 people had pledged to donate more than 1.5 million to buy the 7-hectare Araroa Inlet property, which has 800 metres of beachfront and has been listed since December 2014. Chrissy Small asked people in Nelson their thoughts on the offer and whether they believe the government should step in and pay any shortfall.
He shouldn't have any rights at all. We should actually put some money in it, not him. He owns, he earns a lot of more money than us, so he should actually share it, not put it into the beach. It's our beach, not his.
Yeah, so there's 22,000 people have donated to buy that to go back into public ownership. Do you think it's a bit immoral that he should decide to put in probably a quarter, if that, of what's being asked to have that ownership?
No, he shouldn't have any ownership at all. We should have ownership, not him, because, it's our beach, not his.
Well, it's not our beach yet.
No, but it will be. It will be, not his.
What about the government? Do you think they should come up with any shortfall?
I think the government should actually put some funds into it to see how we go and see if we can own it, not him.
I don't know.
Do you think he should, if 22,000 people so far have put money in, should everyone have a claim to ownership, or should it just go back into the public interest?
Back into the public.
Right.
Yeah.
And if there is a shortfall, should the government step up and buy it?
Yeah. Yeah, they should.
Okay.
It's a great idea, but not to have ownership.
Yeah. So he should do it like everyone else?
Absolutely.
Okay, and if there is a shortfall, should the government step up?
Look, I think to put it back into government ownership where everyone uses it, I think that's not a bad idea. Yes.
Well, if he can fence it off and have it as a cat sanctuary, I'd be really happy with that, but no doubt it won't become that because he doesn't like cats.
Right, so you'd be happy with him investing that money and then having ownership over and above everybody else?
No, I reckon what should happen is the government should properly fund the Conservation Department, DOC, so we could actually own that anyway. However, having said that, due to the fact that this government is, backing the meat and dairy industry, which is causing global warming, it's going to actually be underwater anyway, so I wouldn't want to pay too much for it because half it's not going to be there soon anyway, so maybe let someone else lose the money on it.
Well, I don't actually have an opinion for this. I haven't followed the whole thing, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't know anything about it?
No, I don't know anything.
I think he's quite entitled to put some money in, but I think it should be the same as everyone else. You just put your money in and everybody owns it. It's not exclusive use at all.
Okay, and what do you think about the government? Should they step in if there's a shortfall?
Sure they should, yeah. Yep.
So as a taxpayer, you don't mind about that?
No, not at all, no. Okay. They've stepped in before for plenty more other things than that and for a lot more expensive things than that too.
Like a flag?
Or a railways, who knows?
Yes, I think he's got a real cheek to even offer. We can do it without him and we'll get there. And I think good on Dwayne, who's organising it, and let's back him.
Right, and what about the government? Should the government get involved and help cover any shortfall?
No, I think we can do it without the government as well. We're nearly there.
Go By Bike Day breakfast on Wednesday morning kicked off at 7:30 a.m. and drew out around 100 people, and not all were on bikes. People of all ages, including the very young to the elderly, came down to 1903 Square to take part in the free breakfast event. The event had live music from the Plinkers and a pile of fun bike activities and giveaways.
Well, basically it's about celebrating cycling and patting people on the back for being cyclists, because the more people who ride bikes, the less congestion we've got, the healthier we are, the more connected we are to our community. And Nelson increasingly is about cycling. It's a great place to be a cyclist.
An Air New Zealand aircraft carrying passengers in transit from Christchurch to Palmerston North was diverted to Nelson Airport Tuesday afternoon around 3 p.m. after pilots found the air in their cockpit was becoming hazy. The ATR aircraft landed in Nelson without incident at 3:15 p.m. where passengers disembarked and were later re-accommodated on alternative services. Nelson engineers inspected the aircraft and rectified an isolated electrical issue later Tuesday afternoon. The aircraft was put back into service on Wednesday. Air New Zealand state that it was not an emergency landing, as some media have been reporting. An explosion in Motueka had reports of workers being injured at Italy's Ward Street workshop in Port Motueka on Wednesday morning. The explosion occurred while a worker had been using a grinder in a workshop pit. Fire and ambulance were called out to the scene around 9:40 a.m, but fortunately there were no injuries and the incident was described as being only minor. The matter was referred to WorkSafe New Zealand, who were on the scene soon after. And finally, water restrictions are back on for areas of Tasman, and the latest forecast is not showing any significant rain for the next couple of weeks. Stage 1 water rationing will come into force in the Waimea catchment from Monday the 15th of February. A 20% cut in consent takes will be imposed for those permit holders in Reservoir, Waimea West, Upper Confined, Delta Upper Catchment and Golden Hills zones. The Machu Picchu River is dropping and restrictions are not far off for its catchment. The Motueka and the Mutri areas are bearing up well and no rationing is necessary at this time. Groundwater levels are dropping on the Waimea Plains and Council is continuing to monitor salinity levels along the coastal areas. Mr Bush King said that the urban water supply was holding up well, but stressed that careful water use was important to delay the need for hosing restrictions. The situation in Golden Bay is also dry, with consent-based restrictions in place for Tākaka and Anatoki water users. Flow sharing is now in place for the Rewalker Management Zone. After the break, we'll bring you the latest weather update and some events and happenings coming up from around the region.
Nelson Tire Center. Great prices, great service. Buy your own Bryford trailer. All types, all sizes. See Colin Douglas for your tires and batteries.
Are you looking for a scooter, walker, wheelchair, baby seats or pushchairs? Then come in and see the Nelson Region Specialist at Mobility for You, 269 Queen Street, Richmond, opposite the library. We have a huge selection of scooters, walkers, wheelchairs and accessories, along with a free booklet guide. We also provide a breakdown service if you ever get a puncture or a flat battery. We have fully equipped service vans to rescue you. Hi, I'm Robin Jordan and I invite you to call in and see the friendly team at Mobility for You, 269 Queen Street, Richmond, opposite the library.
Why would you want to pay as much as $1,000 for a single bed mattress when you can buy a high quality locally made mattress like this for as little as $220? And a queen size mattress could cost you in excess of $3,000, but at Nelson Beds you could have a mattress like this as low as $425. So why would you go out and spend a fortune on your child's bedroom when you can come to Nelson Beds and buy a complete single mattress and base set, a 7-drawer Scotch chest, a headboard and a 3-drawer bedside cabinet for as little as $979? So call and discuss our custom manufacturing options and local after sales service at Nelson Beds, Nelson's only bedding manufacturer.
Well, the way Freeview is set up is that people should try and receive UHF Freeview first. Satellite should really only be a fallback option if you live in a country or out in the country, or you live in an area that's maybe shielded from the transmitter. If you go terrestrial, you've got the advantage that you get the mainland channels as well. So that's plus, there's an extra 8 channels there, plus 2 radio channels. So.
If you need help tuning into the digital TV channels, please give us a call. Nelson TV and Video Services, 41 Halifax Street, Millers Acre Car Park.
.1 The Shed.
Welcome to Smugglers Pub and Cafe, open 7 days a week with free parking all day. Our lunch menus have that fat old-fashioned flavour where we treat you like treasure with the food you'll savour.
We cater for children, grannies and granddads too, with special rates and privileges given to the elderly lunchtime crew. Our staff are friendly and kind and want to see you all come back time after time.
Daytime or evening, it doesn't matter. Give us a call on 546 4084 and we'll be happy to spoil ya.
Victory 60 Plus is on Tuesdays at 1:30 through to 3:30 p.m. at 238 Upper Vanguard Street. You can join in for cards, games and a cuppa.
On behalf of the team here at Mainland Television News, thank you for joining us, and we'll bring you the latest news and events from around the region again tomorrow.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.
Hi, I'm Paul Mainland and you're watching Ego TV, or something along those lines.
We're the team at JCar, right here in Nelson, 120 Hardy Street. Our shop is full of electronic items,
including security alarm systems, electronic components,
solar and power,
electronics toys,
sound systems, cables and much, much more.
JCar. 120 Hardy Street, Nelson.
World War I was a defining period in our history, impacting greatly on the lives of people from the Nelson province. Memories of the First World War is an exhibition which will be displayed in a number of regional venues and is currently on at the Nelson Provincial Museum.
Welcome me hearties to Smugglers Pub and Cafe, famous for hearty meals, craft ales and a friendly service way. Sensational seasonal menus with meals all day and evening too, or sail in for a snack with special menus for young smugglers and you. Settle in for a jolly old time, relax and enjoy our award-winning dining and lovely fine wine. Decked out in an old worldly way, we're open 7 days. Book or come on in to 8 Muritai Street, not far from a beach, walk or swim. Phone 5464 084.